My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Summers, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. I can see we've already got Nerland tuning in, and I'm sure several others that have just been watching the WTA Weekly show that we did with Pam Shriver when we looked back on Stuttgart. Apologies, Ruan, we didn't have time to talk about Svitolina. I don't even know, what was the score in her final over Danilovic?
4-6, was it 4-6?
Yeah, went to a break. It was something like 10-8 in the tiebreaker.
Because wasn't Danilovic up a break in the first set?
Yeah, which was a break up in the second as well, but Svitolina managed to get the break back twice.
Maybe a little bit of experience there in terms of finals, etc. I think Danilovic has won one title before, maybe a 250
3
last
titles,
year.
hasn't she?
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, James. I'm out of
I don't know how
touch
I know.
regarding...
I have no idea how I know that much about Danilovic, but I just remember she won a title in she won a title in name's gone for me. It was one of those Chinese tournaments that took place at the back end of last year, and that was her first hard court title. But she did win 2 clay court titles before that.
That's the one I'm remembering, the one from last year, the hard court on in Asia somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, yes, indeed. So yeah, 6-4, 7-6, and that second set tiebreak was an epic in many respects. 10-8, the Ukrainian winning that one, the number 1 seed in France. But we are here to look forward to a draw that they will both be participating in, which is Madrid, both on the men's and the women's side. But I do think, because of the nature of the way we began the show and also the way we ended the previous one, I do want to begin with looking at the women's side. I was struggling before we went on air. I was struggling for actually both men's and women's to pick out any popcorn matches in round 1. Now, of course, there may be some qualifiers that emerge, etc. And as the draw is officially takes shape in the next 24 hours or so. In fact, we've got some qualifiers underway right now. I've got on my screen any notable results, any notable losses. A walkover I see. So Tordoni is pulled out, it seems. But Harriet Dart losing, Fergus?
Yeah. She was 5-2 down in the second set, and I kind of called it there because the 5-2 game went on forever. And I think Dart saved 2 match points in that game and then managed to get it to a breaker. And I kind of thought that she would walk over the third set because that's just sort of how I thought the match would play out. But Lepchenko kind of was really solid on serve. Dart couldn't really do anything with the serve, which is strange because if you look at Lepchenko's serve at 38, it's definitely not a weapon. So yeah, Dart will be disappointed that she couldn't come through that, but it's Harriet Dart. So
yeah, and it is clay
on the clay court.
Yeah. So there's a few sort of very familiar names to me in terms of having met them, having interviewed them, and sometimes such as Zeynep Sonmez winning today. I would think, depending on who she's playing in the next round, that she may well make the main draw. Udvardi, by the way, was supposed to be playing in the W100 in Welsh, but has decided to jump ship and hop over to Madrid. I saw a picture of her on Instagram today, and initially I was very pleased for her, thinking, oh, that's nice, she's in Madrid doing qualies. Oh, that means she's not going to be playing the W100 near Welsh. So that was a quick change of heart there somehow, some way. So she's in action. In fact, she's in action very, very soon. So she probably only arrived yesterday and in action again today. That's about it in terms of women's qualifiers. I don't think I have anything major to say about some of those things going on. I see Paris one as well, and Teichmann too. But anyway, regarding
maybe Maya Joint.
Yeah,
Maya
okay,
Joint.
go on,
yeah.
brother.
No, she's just got potential. Young Australian, good power. So just think the conditions could help her, and obviously she's the fourth seed in the qualifying draw. So she got a little respect on her name, and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
She's the second highest ranked player in the who's a teenager in the top 100 as well.
Okay, and she's also capable of returning that mega powerful Irani serve. So definitely needs to be highlighted too. So there we go, 3-set win today. And yeah, let's get serious anyway. Okay, main draw. What we do know, of course, we can see Sabalenka and Swiatek and many others getting buys into the second round. I'm kind of okay with it at 1,000. I think there's all sorts of other things to talk about in terms of structure. I do find it a bit weird in 500s though, like we had in Stuttgart. I think some of the players got a buy, and Sabalenka, because her next round was a withdrawal, she ended up having her first match in the whole tournament on Saturday, which just has a weird feel to it. We've got the Colombian clash with the all go-go's in Arango and Osorio as well. I do think Layman's against Raducanu. I've got Kudermetova sisters in action. But before I talk about the Kudermetova sisters...
That should be a good one, though. The Kudermetova sisters going off against each other. Because you got the power of both of them. I mean, Polina's ball striking is one of the cleanest ball strikings I think I've seen on the women's tour in many a year. And you come up against a sister who's not had a few bad results in the last couple of weeks. At least is starting to pick up a few more wins. It could be a really interesting contest to see the battle of the sisters. We know that when Andreeva plays, Mira Andreeva plays a sister, that her level can dip from during those matches. So it could be an interesting contest to see that Polina, who we're probably more thinking is a player that's on the up, if she's able to actually beat her older sister Veronica.
When you said that there were no popcorn matches, that was probably the main one that I was going to point out to you, just because it's interesting because they're sisters, and they're it could be interesting to see if anything develops out of that. As James said, when the Andreeva sisters play, Mira doesn't tend to play her best tennis, so I wonder if anything will come out of that. As Dave said it, it's always a little awkward, but. Yeah, we'll see.
Nerlan says he's expecting a gigantic run from Raducanu in this tournament, potential semi-final. But Nerlan is funny. That's funny, particularly because he's used the word gigantic. I think that adds to the mirth for me. Have you got any thoughts, Carson, on either the Kudermetova sisters clash or Layman's versus Raducanu?
I think Layman's and Raducanu should be a good match, and winner of that one obviously going up against Marta Kostyuk, who had to withdraw from her last tournament. So hopefully she's healthy, but if she's not, there's an opportunity for one of them to get a little bit of a run. Obviously, like Paula Badosa could be waiting in that. She's been injured a bit more often recently. So
this is her first tournament, I think, in a while, right?
Yeah, I don't know. When was the last time she played? Was it Indian Wells?
Yeah, I think so. Indian Wells. She withdrew from Miami and then...
she's been in Madrid and practicing for a while. I mean, maybe many aren't surprised by that being Spanish, but I saw a picture of her from 2 or 3 weeks ago already playing on the Manuel Santana court there. So she was already optimistic, I guess, about playing in Madrid, and obviously pinpointed this as her return. But of course, it's been a back problem that she's had, Carson, again. And that was the thing that flared up in 2023. I've said this many times on the channel, but I'm going to repeat it again. I was there when it happened against Ostapenko at the end of a rally. I mean, it was obviously a sort of a gradual, endurance scenario for her in that particular match. But I remember at the end of some rallies, her keeling over into the flower beds, thinking at the time she was just suffering from Ostapenko pushing her around left, right, and center. But it ended up being something more serious. I think she pulled out the French Open, rushed back for Wimbledon. that wasn't necessarily a good idea. Barely played again for the rest of the year, and put out comments about having to live with this for the rest of her career, and it's flared up again, Carson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, hopefully we wish her well and health, and that she seems fairly confident, at least, that she can make a comeback here. Hopefully she's given herself enough time and not rushing back and risking another injury early on. But if she's healthy, she's very dangerous, I think, in this section.
Tony, you are new to me. Is that a Danish surname you have there? And are you on board, having caught up with some of our coverage of either Holger Rune recently, but also Muller, of course, winning the ATP Challenger? But great to have you on board. And please do subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you do so, that little number at the bottom of the screen, you'll get to see it tick over, and you can do a little dance if you wish. No need to if you don't want to. Brenner, by the way, has been, Nerland is saying he's been scarily quiet. Well, Brenner is waiting his turn, and I'm now going to get his thoughts on this section of the draw.
I think this is a great opportunity for Badosa. Pretty sure she's from Madrid.
Born in New York, I think, weirdly enough. But yeah, I
really?
think from Madrid. Yeah, I think
Random.
so. And
Random.
You know what? The Spanish public, let's just say that they're not like 100% on board with her in the same way that they would be with Rafa or born in New York, resides in Dubai, but yeah, I think there's obviously a huge following for her in Spain and obviously a Spanish player. But yeah, they're not 100% on board in the same way they are in. She'll get 90% of the support, but it's not as vociferous as it would be for Rafa or Carlos or some of the other Spanish players. Anyway, go on. If Badosa's fit, Breno, I think you're right.
Yep. I mean, that's obviously the asterisk that we'll be looking out for, and then it probably comes down to Raducanu, Kostyuk. Two great baseliners.
You think Raducanu's beating Lehmann's? Because I'm not so sure.
I do.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you also have to take into account the form situation, and Lehmann's just playing last week, at least having more match play experience in terms of being on the clay, switching the surfaces. So we have a little bit of I guess question marks in terms of Raducanu form, health, and switching surfaces.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, she had a decent level in Stuttgart last year, and also I think, didn't she do some Billie Jean King Cup stuff on clay, James?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she won
sorry.
both her matches. Was basically the MVP of the tie against France last year. And generally in Madrid, tends to be Raducanu's best clay tournament. She got to what I think it was the fourth round a few years ago.
Press conference a couple of years ago and withdrew as well. She did well there.
Yeah, and it's she beat Kostyuk back in, I think it was 2022 when she played her and got to that fourth round. So this tends to be a tournament that if Raducanu ever along with Stuttgart, bizarrely, tends to be the two clay tournaments that Raducanu could really pick it up and play some of her best tennis on the clay surface. Like you say, I think it probably is a 50-50. I think Susan Lehmann's has played really well. The win against Katie Bolter at the Billie Jean King Cup, a few match wins in Roulon. It's going to be a tough battle, but you'd certainly say it's either or could end up winning that tie.
In this whole section, I'm going to be not that bold and not that ambitious and go with Qinwen Zheng to sort of emerge and get to, would that be the quarterfinals? Am I right with this? So that'd be first round, second round, third round, fourth round, and then I think the quarterfinals. Anybody going against Qinwen?
If it's not her, it could be whoever beats her in the second round. Kruger or Podapova, which I think that's a pretty good first round match there. There'll be a lot of good ball striking in that one.
Indeed. Okay, just going back up to the first section as well, the Arena Sabalenka section, I guess we can call it. As I say, I do think we're short of popcorn matches, in my opinion. I mean, I think you're right to point out the Kudermetova sisters clash and maybe Lehmann's and Raducanu, and maybe a qualifier can fall somewhere and really start making us think. But Sabalenka, I mean, I guess it's Anisimova, and that's about it in this section. Anybody want to add something to that? Maybe Brenner?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think Mertens'
Putintseva,
recency,
maybe?
we saw that. That should be fairly straightforward. Yeah, Putintseva, maybe. Definitely maybe, but
I can't think of a result that Putinseva's had since maybe the grass court season when she won a title and danced to Britney Spears. That's my last memory of Putintseva.
She played so well last year, and she really put in the hard yards towards the back end of the year when a lot of people are pulling out of tournaments and kind of calling it a fraction early for the season. She stayed till the back end of the season and got the points. And this season she's just been like not on it. Well, it's not. I doubt that she's not been on it, but she just hasn't got the results that she thought she was going to get, continuing from how well she was playing last year. So I mean, unless this is a big upshift, I don't see Putintseva beating Anisimova. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I haven't actually watched Anisimova play on a clay court yet. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I see this. This is why it's great to have people in the chat bringing this sort of knowledge, because the head-to-head she has with Sabalenka, Anisimova, is 5-2. Now, of course, there's a lot of tennis to be played before the two would meet in Madrid. But then Sabalenka, obviously a 2-time champion here, a 3-time finalist, if I've got my stats right there, and then has in those 7 matches, have they ever played on clay? Let's have a look at that. Yeah. Any thoughts on this section, Carson?
I think I agree with you and Brenner that these two names are probably the ones to watch here. I'm not sure I trust Putintseva enough right now. And then the Sabalenka-Elise Mertens head-to-head is fairly well documented at this point. It's become quite one-sided. So if Eala Tomljanovic, who got a wild card here, if she goes on a tear, like, you never want to count her out. She's beaten some big names before, but I do think that this is going to come down to Sabalenka and Anisimova.
4 of the matches actually have been on clay, so there you go, and including 1 in Madrid. And as Jean points out, it's 3-1 in Anisimova's favour, albeit that only 2 matches have been played in the last 2, or even so 2024. In the last 3 years, they've only played each other twice. And that's 1-1. But still interesting, but I'm not even convinced that Anisimova will get that far, but let's see if she can prove me wrong. All right, so we're looking at Sabalenka in this section. I don't know if anybody's going against Arena to make the quarters.
No.
And I think
I'd be as confident to say I'll put her straight through to the final already.
Really? Okay. Qinwen as well in this section. I think are we all going for Qinwen? Someone going to go for Badosa? Kostyuk? Kostyuk could.
Definitely.
I want to. I just think Badosa, like, deep into tournaments is just a little bit, I don't know, sketchy, we'll say. I mean, you just don't know what she's going to hold up
on it in Madrid as well. So that's another
You
reason.
also have to think about with Badosa that she has a couple of like 2.5 hour matches that she comes through. How's the body going to hold up?
That's what I'm pointing out.
Yeah. Like, are we seriously thinking she puts into tough performances and then she's got Zheng in round 4? You really think that she's going to come through that 4-3 and then have enough in the tank to then play Sabalenka? I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I'm pretty boring so far with my predictions, but and I think we all pretty much are. Maybe Kostyuk could do something in that section. Anyway, let's move on.
No,
a former finalist is former winner. Sorry, Jabeur won the title, right? Didn't she 3 or 4 years ago?
Yes, she did.
Yeah. So Jabeur in this section. I think this is a good period of the year for Ons. I know she got to the US Open final of 2022, but I'm not so big on her on a hard court. I think a lot of her weapons, her variety, her drop shot, her slice, everything that she has is far better suited to the natural surfaces. So this is the Pegula section, but Pegula, I think, has got to a quarterfinals here in 23. Not sure if she's done much more then, and I think she was maybe aided and abetted by the draw that year. This is the section where I'm not convinced that the top seed is making. Of course, Pegula has crept up to number 3 in the rankings, but I don't remember too many title winning runs. Did she win a 250 maybe in the US some point this year?
She won Charleston, so
yeah,
the 500. So
Charleston 500.
And then she also won. I think Austin's the 250. You're also referring to that she won as well.
Yeah,
and then
okay,
obviously made
Charleston,
the
Green
final.
Clay, etc. But yeah, I'm
count.
looking at this, and I'm thinking of Alexandrova is probably the favourite to emerge from this section, largely based on both her ceiling, but also her run in Stuttgart. Montgomery, didn't she do well in Madrid last year, Brenner? Didn't she?
That sounds right.
Sabalenka?
That sounds right.
James?
I just
Put
remember
up
that
a fight
horror
against
match she
someone.
played against Katie Bolter.
Katie
That was
Bolter,
all that.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
She beat Bolter, did she?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a horror show.
It was.
I remember more, I think, a match with Sabalenka and I think it was Sabalenka, and she was like maybe on serve midway through the first set and thinking, oh, okay. But yeah, Alexandrova is the name that jumps out. Danilovic, yeah, I can see that. It's always difficult to tell how fresh some of these players will be. I mean, fingers crossed she'll get 2 or 3 days. She's going to be playing Azarenka. How close are we to the end for Azarenka, James? What are we? Is this her
To
last?
the end. Oh, we better be careful saying that. I think Jake will lynch us if we start saying
Jake,
that.
I haven't seen Jake in the chat yet, so.
If you say that close to the end, it's not looking good. I mean, Azarenka not unseeded for the first time, in years. It feels like at one of these bigger 96 draw events. Potentially, I mean, I haven't really seen her play. She hasn't really won much, if anything, at all this year. I mean, the key thing is if she can somehow find a bit of form or any sort of ability to still get a few more wins, she'll probably still stick around for a couple of years. But yeah, it seems like that coaching partnership she had with Greg Rosetsky hasn't necessarily worked out all too well at the moment. So
Azarenka and Rosetsky together? When did that happen?
They started the coaching relationship at the back end of last year, around about like the Canadian Open last year.
I remember seeing Greg, funnily enough, so he was working at the Madrid Open in 23, and I saw him once throughout the entire tournament, and that was when he came into the media room to ask where the coffee machine was, and he was very disappointed to find out there wasn't one. And that's the last time I think I thought of Greg Rosetsky, and yet now he's working with Azarenka. I didn't even know that, and I apologize regarding Jessica Pegula making the final here in 2022, losing to Jabeur. But yeah, I'm going to go with Danilovic is a name for me as well in this section, but I'm going to go with Alexandrova. I just think that I think Danilovic on clay is a good thing. I just wonder if maybe Roland Garros is a bit better suited to her. There was somebody else. There was a player that was mentioned in terms of doing well in Stuttgart and Madrid. I think it was maybe Raducanu. And yeah, it's the least like Roland Garros scenarios, and so maybe sort of focus more on Rome in terms of how players perform there. But yeah, I'm going to go Alexandrova. Give me a name, Carson, from this section.
I'm going to be super boring here again, and I think Pegula could come out of this. She's got a couple of titles, made the finals in Miami. So after a rough start to the year, she's been playing pretty well the last couple of months. I think.
Give me a name, Brenner, from this section.
I mean, I'm a little. Well, maybe we'll get to it after the section underneath. Alexandrova.
Okay, James.
I'm going Rybakina.
Well,
what? She's in this
section.
That's the section underneath. I think.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
we're going that far breaking down. Sorry.
I know.
God, we're doing it quite small. I'm going to go on.
All right, Fergus.
I'm going to go on as well.
Ooh, couple of shouts for ons. All right. Fergus, let's go down to the next section, what was now going to be called the Brenner section, because he's been looking at it for the last 20 minutes. Fergus, what are we thinking here? Obviously, we already know James, so we don't need to speak to him anymore. Svitolina's coming off a title-winning run in Rouen, and she's already there in the second round. But there's also Paulini as the top seed, I believe, in this section, Fergus.
Yeah, I'm struggling to look past Paulini at the moment. Looks very consistent on the clay. I mean, Svitolina this season has been super consistent, as in, I feel like it's not been talked about enough how well Svitolina's done this year. She's obviously super experienced on the tour, and she's playing some of her best tennis right now, obviously winning the title just a couple of days ago. But I think it's hard to look past Paulini. Obviously made the French Open final, kind of got torn apart by Swiatek there, but yeah, I'm looking at Paulini, and I'm looking as that it's going to take a big performance to beat Paulini. She's so good around the court, and she makes you play that extra ball, and a lot of players that are less experienced on the clay really struggle to deal with them getting that extra ball. That's why, you look at those like the French players or the Italian players, and they slide around so much, and it becomes a real hassle to try and get it past them and hit winners. But yeah, I think Paulini is probably nailed on.
I can see why, though, Brenner. You say nailed on there, Fergus. I can see why Brenner was humming and hawing a bit over this section. At least until now, it seems to be like the most evenly balanced section. I think there's 2, 3, I think 4 stretch players that you could make a shout for progressing from here. But let's come to James. And James, why is Rybakina your pick from this section?
She got Kessler and Andreescu. Kessler's still improving on the surface, and Andreescu still coming back from injury. Then potentially, you got Sitovina, but you got Sitovina as a potential sort of third round. But a lot of matches in the past, and given the way in which players are able to hit through on the Madrid clay, comparative to the other tournaments, you feel as though in that matchup she would be able to overpower Sitovina, and then you again get to either Paulini or Linette. And I gather that we're saying Paulini's done well, but only one top 10 victory or top 20 victory this year, and that was against Coco Gauff last week, and then the loss to Sabalenka in the next round, to me, doesn't suggest we're getting anywhere near back to where Paulini was last year, or at least the results that we're getting last year. So for me, that's how I see Rybakina then sort of progressing her way through to the quarters.
I feel as though it's tough to take that on board. I feel as though Ruud and Paulini are kind of in the same boat, as in clay style, as in they kind of stick around in the top 5, top 10 for the entirety of the year, but mainly for, obviously, Paulini's a great grass court player as well, and Ruud is a golf player in a couple months' time. But Paulini's definitely more of a clay courter than she is a hard court player, and that's where she gains the majority of her big wins, because it suits her style so much. Hard court Paulini is nowhere near the same weapon as a clay court Paulini, in my opinion. So I feel like that's where she gets most of her big wins in the year.
Carson, this section?
I think if Rybakina is healthy, she should come through here. I'd like to give a shout out, though, to Magda Linette. She's quietly been playing very well so far this year. Started the season outside of the top 50. I believe might have been outside of the top 60, and has gotten back into the top 30. She's quietly been winning matches and hasn't had a big run in a tournament yet, but she's doing quite well this season.
I'm going to go with Rybakina as well, but it's really kind of, as it often is, it's kind of up to Elena. If Elena's playing 80, 90% of her abilities, there's a Madrid title in her. If not this year, then some point in her career. She's not necessarily ideally suited to clay in terms of her movement. She's obviously won in Stuttgart, but as I said before, Stuttgart and Madrid is sort of outliers compared to certainly Rome in terms of indicators but yeah, so this is, her serve, blah, blah, blah. Brennan, what are your thoughts on this section?
Yeah, I mean, it's great that we have the ability to throw out all these names, and even in the chat, we have people picking different players. I think it's like Rybakina for a few reasons. I feel like it's due time. This season has not been, Rybakina-esque. I don't even think she's made a final in the tournament she's played. Yeah, a semi, maybe.
Okay. Middle East somewhere.
Yeah, but I like what Fergus is saying about Paulini. I think she's maybe more of an all-courter than you give her credit for. But yes, clay would be her best surface. I think Madrid is a little bit of an outlier because altitude plays more of a factor than I think people think. And even on the women's side, that's why we have Earl on here and Tony talking about Svitolina and how dangerous she is, because I feel like her base level is so high that if her opponent is dipping below, she can take advantage of that. But Rybakina obviously has the bigger weapons here that suit the surface well, suit the conditions well, and it's just getting to that point where I hope she used this training block per se to help get her mind right. We don't really know what's going on in the coaching situation still, so that's obviously lingering, but it's just there for the taking for her in terms of an opportunity to get some high level wins, but progress her way through this tournament.
Cool. We've all given our reasons, and we've even mentioned, I think, who we think is progressing. But give me one word to remind everyone. Fergus from this section.
Paulini.
James.
Brenner.
Yep, Rybakina. Brenner.
Rybakina.
Carson.
Rybakina.
And I'm going Rybakina too. Okay, so next section we have Mira Andreeva, I believe, is the top seed here. We've got the mercurial Karolina Muchova, and I mean that in the best possible sense. I'm watching her play. She obviously gets a bye as well, just like Mira into the next round. Fresh and Samsonova too. James, what are you thinking regarding this section?
It's I would say Andreeva. It's just a name that stands out. Mukova, we haven't really seen anything much, if anything, recently. It seems a bit of a bizarre blast of the past, and it's bizarre to say that because of how young she is. But to see Fruvertova's name back in the draw sheet, I know her and her sister have been jumping in and out of the top 100 for the past 18 months or so. But yeah, looking at it, Andreeva just looks like a quite straightforward draw. Should come through Freck quite easily, and then either Samsonova or Mukova, you'd feel Andreeva wouldn't have a problem getting past, really.
I could see Avanesian maybe. It's an interesting scenario with her and Samsonova if that ends up coming to fruition, just in terms of how opposite their styles are. That could be interesting, and I could see Avanesian making a run here, but I'm not necessarily choosing her to emerge from this section. Fergus, what are you thinking?
I think I agree with Gene in the chat that this is Mira's section to lose, really. Okay. It's tough. Obviously, Mira, it's arguable that Mira's best surface is clay, as in terms of last year before she then won Indian Wells. Now she's been incredible this year. But last year, obviously made the semi-finals of Roland Garros. Obviously, Madrid's not as much of an indicator towards Roland Garros as as Rome is, but I still think that this is a very strong draw for Mira to come through. She's playing some seriously good tennis. Obviously, Stuttgart didn't go her way, but I have no doubts that she'll come through this. She might have a few problems against. I feel like it will kind of play out how you'd think how the seeds say it would in this section, and it will be Muchova versus Andreeva in round 4, but I think it might get a little tight. But I just think with the success that Andreeva's had recently on court and the lack of success that Muchova's had on court recently, I feel like it kind of spells itself out.
Yeah. Berna?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to talk about in this little section. This is Andreeva's section to lose, and I think I agree with what Gene's saying. Is she ran into a very good level in terms of Alexandrova last week. So, should be here with confidence.
Carson, tell us about your thoughts, and then at the end, obviously, just say who you think's emerging.
Yeah, I think it's Andreeva's section to lose. I think Muhova has a pretty good shot here. She hasn't played much recently, but I think Mira will come through, but would not at all be surprised if Muhova made move.
Anybody not going for Mida from this section? There we go. Okay. Down to the next section then, which is known as the, let's call it the Leylah Fernandez section, just for the laugh. Okay, so this is obviously, but on a serious note, it's Coco Gauff in terms of her being the highest ranked player in this section. And I see it as being a race between her, maybe Towson. Of course, there's loads of qualifiers still to be placed. This is probably the qualifiers section because there's so many that are still got to be placed here. But I think because of the lack of names, and I don't mean big names in terms of notoriety, but or well known in terms of playing tennis, but just because there's so few, I'm going to have to go with Coco Gauff here. I mean, does anybody think of anyone else? Does anyone any other names they want to throw out there?
It's a really it's a really mucky section, is the way I describe that one. In terms of nobody in any real form. Clara Towson did get to the final of Dubai. Bencic did win thingy, but they won hard courts a while back. Yeah, I mean, I'll go Towson. Why not go Towson? Could be the big hitter. Go through this surface. Had Myra in no form at the moment. That would probably be my pick. And I just don't trust Gauff, certainly after losing to a Paolini like she did.
Yeah, I just think Gauff might, again, serve might save her a little bit more often in Madrid than elsewhere. But I also have memories of a very, very rough performance. Maybe the roughest Coco Gauff watch in recent years was against Paula Badosa in Madrid 2 years ago. And Badosa just peppered that forehand and Coco obliged. But I'm still going to go with Coco just because of the lack of information elsewhere. Towson, love her. Clay, slightly less so. Haddad Meyer would normally be in my consideration, but as you know, her form has fallen off a cliff. And I don't remember a run from Leylah for a long, long time. I think she won a tournament, maybe a 250 in Hong Kong about 18 months ago, but since then, very little. So yeah, Coco is for me. Anyone going against Coco apart from James with Clouder?
I think this section is going to blow up, honestly.
It probably will. You know, it's probably missing a qualifier or two here, and they're the ones that are going to be contesting the fourth round. But for what we have right now,
Belinda Bencic, I would not at all be surprised if she came out of here. If Diana Yastremska got hot, I wouldn't be surprised to see her come out of here. Like, I feel like this is pretty even.
Yeah.
A lot of players having a good shot.
Yeah. All right. Next.
I'm curious though. I'll throw this in. Where is Haddad Maya defending her points? Because I'm with you, John. I feel like typically,
I
give her an opportunity. I feel like she deserves an opportunity.
A fourth round at the US, maybe. But that's about
and maybe
all
the
I can.
quarters in the French Open. Let me have a look. I think she lost to Iga, didn't? Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll take this opportunity to say, all right, if there's any chance for her.
No, she lost in the first round the French last year.
Really? Okay. If there's any chance for her to turn the season around, it would be here.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it at that.
She's got to do it pretty fast.
Because she made the quarters here.
Right.
That's where I'm thinking of. Yeah, and the US Open quarters.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying. This is perfect conditions for her. So we'll see if she can get some form back.
What we'll do is we'll talk about the wildcard thing, which is also in the headline. We'll do that in between the men's and the women's draws. But anyway, at the moment, that's that section. Madison Keys section here, also involving Emma Navarro, Donna Vekic, and Anna Kalinskaya, among others. I think it's Keys' time to sort of get back to the top table of tennis, having, slipped away a little bit since that Indian Wells loss to Arina Sabalenka so brutally. So I'm going to go with her from this section. Any disagreements amongst the panel?
And Keys could have a potential second round match with Naomi Osaka, which that would be an absolutely huge match. I
Yes,
think
that would be. That would be. And I think it'll happen. I think
so.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you.
Bronzetti's good. The thing is, this tends to be the one surface that Bronzetti does really well on.
Yeah. But I'm still going for Naomi.
Yeah, I mean, Bronzetti actually had a good little spell over the last few months, but it's like we're talking about like the training block here. You know, the players who didn't play those opening, clay tournaments, they've all been training. So I trust Osaka a bit more.
Rough draw, perhaps there for Madison. Let me just have another look at this. So Osaka, yeah, possibly Kalinskaya, and then maybe Navarro. Yeah. Go on, Fergus. I think you're going to say something.
I just want to confirm Brenner's question. So Haddad Myers defending quarterfinal points here and then doesn't really have much to go off. And then when he gets towards the US Open, she's got a ton of points to defend. Quarterfinals at US, made the final in Cleveland, which I think is a 500, if I'm not mistaken. Won the title in Seoul, fourth round of Wuhan.
Okay, some Asian swing success. Yeah, that adds up. Quick courts over there.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a healthy live audience of over 50 people. If you haven't hit that like button, please do. And if you are new to the channel, just click subscribe and it's done. And then you'll know when we're going live again in the future. Okay, just give me a word. We've done all our talking. I'm going Keys. Fergus.
Keys. Actually,
James.
No. I'll go Osaka,
go on.
actually. Osaka.
That's like Monty Python. That is when he goes, "What's your favorite color?" Blue. No, yellow. And then he falls in the river. Anyway, you're going Osaka.
Osaka, yeah.
Okay, James.
I'm going left field. I'm going Vekic.
Okay.
Vekic is usually good on clay.
Sure.
I'll go Keys.
Okay, Carson.
I think I'm going to go Keys.
Okay.
I don't feel very confident about that, though.
Yeah. Carson, you're normally the left field guy, so I thought you'd go left field again. But okay, here we are. We are now in the Katie Volleynet section, as we all know and love it as. Who Brenner is going to stop Katie Volleynet from not only getting to the quarterfinals but also taking the title in Madrid?
Iga.
Yeah. Okay.
No question mark there, but yes, Iga.
Yeah, I mean, okay, who's on a serious level? This is tricky for Iga. I mean, Noskova, Ostapenko, those two. I know there's the popcorn scenario regarding Eala in terms of the fact that they just played each other in Miami recently, and so many other sort of narratives there. But trust me, Eala on clay. It sounds like a huge call. I don't think it's ever going to be a thing. I think it'll always be, she'll be relying on hard court success throughout her career. But I could be terribly wrong, and she may be proving me wrong in the next few days if she ends up beating both Tomova and Anne Swiatek. But for me, this is we would not, especially on a hard court, if she was come up against Noskova. But I still think on clay, both her and Ostapenko, I mean, we can't get a seventh one. We went a while without those two playing, actually. I think maybe from the US Open 23 until the beginning of this year. But thoughts on Iga's path to the quarters potentially, Brenner?
Yeah, I mean, just feel like it's good for her to get outdoors at this point. Take the roof off. Noskova, obviously a tough draw, but should be handling well. Don't know. She didn't play recently, did she? Any of those warm-up events?
Don't recall, no.
Yeah. So, another training block for her, but ultimately it's getting to that quarterfinal for Iga, and then kind of question marks on that side. Ostapenko, kind of has the.
Noskova did play Rouen, sorry. She beat and lost to Suman.
Fair enough.
Sorry, Rouen, you are a bit of a forgotten tournament.
Yeah,
in the midst
unfortunately, I'm just being honest.
Barcelona, Stuttgart, and Munich. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, I mean, Diana Schneider, she kind of had more of a breakout on the grass last year, but she's capable in these conditions. So, we'll see what goes on in that little top section, but it should be Iga there, kind of waiting for whoever comes through on that side.
I'm going Iga from this section, but I did think that we might see a sort of a dip at the beginning of this year, and it's turned out that way. But that's probably a bigger discussion. James, what are you thinking about this section?
I'm going Penko makes it 7-0. I think she's in Iga's head. And it's gonna continue. It's gonna continue. I'm gonna get my fingers burnt probably because Penko will probably go out in the second round most likely.
That's the thing. The thing.
Because her inconsistency. But I just look at that draw and I just go with current form, and I have to go Ostapenko. I think she'll beat Iga in a match in the fourth round, and set up what I believe will be Vekic versus Ostapenko as a quarterfinal.
Wow. I mean, Iga's got to come through Tomova or Eala, Noskova or Shramkova or a bunch of other players. And then who else? Who's knocking Ostapenko out if she doesn't make it to the fourth round, Carson?
I'm actually not really high on Ostapenko's chances here. Obviously, played a lot of tennis this week. James and I were talking briefly before this. Ostapenko is 4-0 against top 10 players this year, and 8-9 against everyone else.
Okay.
Which is cool. Maybe not like the stat line you would expect a top 25 player to have. So I think Dana Schneider is probably the second highest odds of coming out of this section, but I think Iga will go through.
Yeah, I don't know how or where. I mean, Pavlyuchenkova is a former French Open finalist, I think, and has some pedigree, a lot of pedigree on this surface. But she's been hit and miss since she returned from injury in 23. But I don't know, somewhere Ostapenko's going out, and it's that sort of post, trophy winning scenario, going out early in the next tournament, even if she's got a breathing space. Fergus. So I'm going for Iga from this section. Fergus?
If Ostapenko beats Pavlyuchenkova, then I think Ostapenko makes it 7-0 versus Swiatek. But if she loses to Pavlyuchenkova, then it's going to be Iga. But so I'll go Iga because I think Pavlyuchenkova beats Ostapenko.
Yeah. So we've got one Ostapenko and 4 Swiateks, unless I'm mistaken. I think James is Ostapenko and the rest of us are Swiatek. Okay.
Penko for the win.
I do actually think that Ostapenko is so far inside Iga's head at this point that it's nailed on to be 7-0 when they next play.
Although this is not necessarily the best way to approach these scenarios, I do know what Nick means when he said yesterday that he keeps backing Iga because it's got to happen, and I thought it would happen in Stuttgart, and I thought before Stuttgart, so not when it came to the Stuttgart match, I thought that the 4-0 when it was 4-0 was a bit overplayed, and but then after the wins, in Dubai, I think it was this year, and now in Stuttgart, there's a huge.
That reminds me a lot of that Mick McCarthy meme, which is, you lost this many matches, it can't keep going on. It can.
Well, let's see. But most of us do at least have ego emotion from this section. But I almost think that for my thing to come to fruition, then there's got to be somewhere that Ostapenko's losing one of those first 2 matches. But I like that stat that Carson wheeled out, and that makes me think that somewhere, somehow, Ostapenko's not getting to that fourth round. I do think Iga is getting there. I know what Noskova could be a problem, but I do think one way or another Iga's getting to that fourth round. I think she'll go beyond that and to the quarterfinals and maybe even further, obviously defending champion. All right, let's wrap up the women's section just by us chatting, just to give us a thought on who is going to win the tournament. I'm going Sabalenka. Who else is with me?
I think I'm with you.
So I think that's Carson, that's James. And was it Brenner as well, said Sabalenka? Oh, okay. Fergus?
I'm undecided. I'll go new Masters winner but I won't tell you who.
Yeah.
Because I can't give you a name, but I feel as though there's a new because I just feel like Iga's the most dominant clay force on the women's side in the last 5-6 years is not at the peak of her powers at this current moment. And, Sabalenka's obviously a huge force to be reckoned with, but, maybe someone, I wouldn't say it would be like a qualifier, but, someone that you just don't really think will come through, I reckon might win. So I'll say someone will get a new Masters winner.
I just can't make a huge case for anyone except for Aryna. Go on then, Brenna. Try and make one for me.
Yeah, not necessarily who I want to win. I would be happy if they did win. Mira Andreeva.
Okay, Mira Andreeva. All right. Any final additions to that comment, Brenna, before we switch over to the men and have a quick talk about the controversy I mentioned?
All good. Just thinking about conditions here.
Okay.
Who that suits best.
All right. All right. Interesting. For me, that also adds to my Aryna case. But we'll come back to this in the next few days, I'm sure. All right, cool. Let's just quickly touch on the reason why I've added this. I know we were talking about in the WhatsApp chat earlier, more of this sort of IMG leaning sort of let's give the player rank 4,691 in the world a wild card. And again, there's a Spaniard that's going to miss out on a wild card in the form of Ramos Vinolas, right, who's bowing out of the sport. So, yeah, we had it last year with Darwin Blanche. And although obviously I threw out that number there, I think Darwin Blanche was something like 998. I think he was just inside the top 1,000.
I don't think he even was in the top 1,000.
Was he? Might have been just outside. It was around about 1,000 anyway.
I think it was 1,068 when he had the wild card, I'm pretty sure.
But anyway, either way, these are sort of IMG, OMG, perhaps you could also say, Ghosty. In terms of them getting these wild cards, I'm pretty outspoken on it. I think that they're just wrong. I mean, buying a tournament and then giving your clients a wild card and therefore boosting their income and then their fame and their chances of possibly having more income and therefore being able to employ physios and coaches, etc. It's just yeah. And I know Gil Gross, I mentioned this in the WhatsApp. He says, you're either for wildcards or you're against. He did sort of back down a little bit on that when it came to Dominic Thiem, I think, at the French Open. But my point is there are levels. Coleman Wong getting a wild card doesn't outrage me as much as Darwin Blanche. Coleman Wong is ranked 173, I think I checked today. He had a decent run in Miami, also an IMG event, of course. But there are levels to this. Does anyone either disagree or I want to add something to this? Go on, James. Go on. I think you want to say something.
It's one of those weird ones. It's I mean that the whole purpose of a wild card is inherently unfair because we see. True. You mentioned about the fact a Spaniard didn't get it. Well, when you look at Albert Ramos Vinolas, he's not ranked high enough to get into this tournament, and so if he got given a wild card, is it fair the fact that a player that couldn't get in on their own merit is able to play the tournament? I agree with the fact that certainly when you refer to Darwin Blanche last year, I think this year there's a player I saw that's ranked 800 in the world. Maybe that's Sinita person or whatever. I
know we've got Chini, C-I-N-E. He's ranked 387.
I think there's somebody in the women's draw who I know is ranked around about 800. As you say, it's the money that they get, which basically gives them a boost for a good couple of months afterwards to be able to spend on coaches and physios and whatnot. But then also, certainly those players that are ranked so low down, they get 10 points just for rocking up to this tournament. That is effectively like a small futures win that you are gifting to somebody who has not then gone and spent a week winning a futures tournament to collect those points. And I agree, it's a hard one because we've seen in the past. We love it when we had Murray or those for a few years, and Wawrinka likes to get them, and they show up and they generally put in a good performance in the opening round, maybe win a round or two. And certainly at the start of the tournament, they can be a really great way of getting bums on seats at early stage, in the big stadiums.
Bums on seats, though. I don't think they were there to see him against Rafa last year.
No, but what I'm saying is that you can see where wildcards have been used well, because you look at wildcards as an overall prospect, and you kind of feel as though, on the basis of we have a meritocracy sport, which is if you're good enough, you get into these tournaments and you play. And that's the reason why we were so against what we probably heard a year ago about the Super League that the Grand Slams and the biggest tournaments wanted to create, because it would have locked out that meritocracy route. I'm very, aside on being against them being used as much as they have, certainly with how many slots do pop up. Granted, but I do feel as though there are some potential of some sort of like legacy type slots for maybe older players who may have dropped a little bit to allow them to play the tournaments, who we know could be competitive, and that maybe some form of regulation should be placed on the wildcard system.
All right. Any final thoughts on this from either of the other three panelists? If you want to add something, feel free to do so, or we'll just switch over to the ATP side.
I think multiple things can be true at the same time. Like, I think wild cards are good, and we should have wild cards. And there should be some sort of check and balance, that you're not just giving it to some 16-year-old who is ranked in the 800s or whatever. That's a bit of an extreme example. But when there are players who you can make a much stronger argument that they've earned the opportunity to get a wild card, whether they're from the home country, they're retiring soon. I think wild cards are good, but there should be some sort of check and balance on it.
I this from Sean, a real wild card. Let's give one to David Beckham. Got to throw in some actors in there. Justin Bieber and Lady Gaga.
Well, you joke. Diego Forlan got one in the doubles thing. What was it at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. I know. But he held himself okay in a doubles alongside Correa. All right, cool. Unless somebody really wants to shout at me, I really want to get the pace going, so I'm going to switch over to.
I'll just throw my quick thoughts. I think wild cards are important for the sport, and they add opportunity. I think it's difficult when it becomes a little bit of a, let's just say, status situation. And I guess we're talking about IMG specifically. They manage a lot of these tournaments, and so I think it's difficult sometimes is when it's repeat players. We talked about Coleman Wong, Darwin Blanche, but on the flip side, it does allow them to market their potential future star. So it gives them that platform, but sometimes they're not necessarily used efficiently and given to the right people. But you can't get it perfect. So there we go.
Quickly, I'm going to have to shoot off now because we've gone a little bit later than I expected.
No worries, James. It's going on. Thank you.
Just give you my quick thing. I think Holger Rune is going to get to the final here. I think it's perfectly set for Holger to have a run to the final.
Is he going to win? Is he going to win the title? Is he going to win the title?
It's a hard one. Alcaraz could be coming through, but I'm going to go Holger Rune to win the title. That's my prediction.
Wow, what a season! Cheers, James.
Mic drop.
Cool.
That's one of me. I've heard worse calls. Navarro to win the Australian Open by Carlton, but
didn't you have Carson though? Someone beating Andreeva recently? Was it maybe Samsonova?
Was it Anna Smolka?
You called a shock in. You called a shock in Miami. I know that, and I think it was Andreeva to lose. I think to Samsonova.
Or was that Anna Samova?
Anisimova, but it was definitely Andreeva to lose. I remember you calling. So I think there's some redemption there. You make big calls, you're going to get things wrong for sure. All right, listen, nice mic drop there, as you said, though, from James. Let's get into the men's side of the draw anyway. There is certainly a contender for the title at the top of it in the form of Alexander Zverev. This is his section. I'm going to share it on the screen with you guys now. And we've got RBA. Jaime Munar as well in there. It's a very Spanish heavy section here with David Fekina, Carreño Busta as well. Comisania is in there. Obviously, he's Argentinian, and Artefis amongst others. Brenner, give me your thoughts on this section.
Yeah, this section's loaded, to be honest. Are we including Sheldon? Yeah. In terms of Foki, Cerundolo, Fils, those are, and we put Zverev in there now. That's 4 of probably the more 15 most informed players on tour on the men's side. So also you think about the surface, all of them love it. So could be kind of question marks coming out of this section, but very, very competitive.
A quick sort of comment on RBA. He's not probably somebody who would normally jump out, but again, he's somebody whose also career is winding down. I wonder if this might be his last year on tour. It's actually funny enough as well, probably the surface where he's had least success, despite being from Spain. But yeah, in terms of the potential quarterfinalists here, I think Zverev is a potential quarterfinalist. I think David Fokina is a potential quarterfinalist. I think Cerundolo is a potential quarterfinalist, and Artur Fils. I also think in that next layer down, even players that are going deep in these tournaments, players like Pedro Martinez, finally in Estoril last year. I just think that Martinez, when he comes against the absolute elite, I've seen him play Zverev and struggle, for example. But Nuno Borges, very similar as well. 4th round, I think, in Australia last year. And I think he's obviously won a clay court tournament, beating Rafa in the final in Bastad, I think it was last year. So, so there's players of that absolute elite level that are in excellent form, in the form of Fils, Doric Fokina, Cerundolo, and Zverev. And then you've got players in that sort of next level down as well. So it's a really stacked section. But I'm going to be boring, and I'm going to go Zverev here, because I also think, of course, you've got the Madrid factor as well. If this was somewhere else, then maybe. I mean, Cerundolo would be disappointed with the Shelton loss that he had in Munich, and I think maybe a Cerundolo-Zverev final could have been more competitive than the one we ended up having. But yeah, David Fokina as well. A little disappointing, I think, in Barcelona with that most recent loss, but yeah, his form is there. Carson, what are you thinking regarding this section?
I think I agree with you. Zverev should come out of this, but absolutely would not be shocked to see one of these other 3 names that have been mentioned come out of it. Artur Fils has been playing incredible over the last couple of weeks, so that would be absolutely no shock at all if he comes through.
Indeed. Brenner?
Yeah, I like Zverev here as well, but think about Cerundolo. I think this is when he started to really up his form, up his game. I think it was last year where he beat Zverev
Fran did beat in Buenos Aires, and he beat Zverev early this year with obviously.
That was. I mean, I feel like I don't know. I thought that would happen. Home event, and many different motives in terms of Zverev heading down for that golden swing. So I just didn't think he was all there mentally. But yeah.
What do you think in this section, Fergus?
I'm gonna go Fils.
Okay.
I'm still not convinced by Zverev.
I mean, Fils obviously played Barcelona, and so Zverev didn't have to play him there. And I know, of course, Fils did beat Zverev in Hamburg final last year, amongst others.
I feel as though the Zverev run was a mixture of Zverev playing some pretty good stuff, but home tournament he kind of dialed it up for that, and I don't know. I just don't feel as though I'm not watching his tennis last week. It doesn't fill me with the confidence of like, oh, this is this Zverev that was playing at the French Open last year. That like he won the 500, but it's not the tennis that I'm going, oh, he's a force to be reckoned with on a clay court like he was at the end of last year, 2-1 up against Alcaraz in the French Open final, with probably a chance to really, go after it in that 4th set. But yeah, I go Fils in the 4th round, Zverev, Fils in 3.
All right. I'm going Zverev. Brenner and Carson, are you with me with Zverev?
Yeah, I am.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. I think if this was French Open, or not just because of the French crowd, but also the conditions, I might well lean elsewhere. And I think actually a lot of these opponents that Zverev might come up against will all find that serve is coming out that even harder. Even Rafa would struggle in Madrid against the Zverev service, as he did in 2021, I think it was, when Zverev beat him there. So yeah, there's a reason why Zverev has been in this final a couple of times before and also won the title, I think, when he beat Berrettini. And so yeah, I see him emerging from this section. Okay, next section. Talking of serves, we've got Umpechi Pericard. So he may well find that these conditions are to his liking, and he may well hold serve a bit more often than he would on other clay courts. He's going to be coming up against clay court specialist in the form of Navoni, and I know that Navoni has had a sort of mixed year, but he's been close to some big results. He was close to beating Fonseca, of course, in Argentina, amongst other matches. And we've got Mickelson, Bublik, Monfils, last year's champion Rublik as well. Rublev, sorry. Rublik? Because I've got Bublik,
yeah.
I've got Bublik, Mensik, and Rublev all in my mind at the same time. Anyway, I've got Rublev, last year's champion, and also Mensik here as well. So a lot of big names, a lot of thoughts, perhaps. What are your considerations here, Brenner?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just such a jumbled up portion of the draw. I mean, you look at the serve opportunity for a lot of players, and then obviously, I mean, you can't really. For me, I'm not ruling out Navone. Obviously, the altitude isn't necessarily to his favor, but he's a more natural clay court player compared to all of these guys, and especially if he does go up against Shelton, like he does have a super solid backhand, super compact. So I think he's able to hang with those type of players. Mensik, it wasn't a good performance in Munich. That was a quick, short-lived tournament.
Yeah.
So he's still got some work to do. But then, you look down and you see Poppy Ren. Okay, he got some traction at Monte Carlo. Rublev looked good in the first round in Barcelona. Then, loses a tough one to Fokina. So, and then, not to be that guy, but Gael Monfils, he's like another guy you just don't really want to see. I know clay wouldn't be his strongest surface, but, conditions-wise, altitude, he's going to get more out of his serve and big forehand. So, and then using that athleticism to help him on the surface. So, look, there's a lot of opportunities for all these players.
What do you think, Carson?
There's a lot of good names here. It's a bit jumbled up, like Brenner said. I don't really have a great feel on this. I guess I would throw out Shelton as maybe the big name to come through out of this section. Obviously, he's just had a quite long week, so who knows if that affects him at all. But I feel like this is a section with, you could say 7 or 8 players have a legitimate shot to reach the quarterfinals from here.
Yeah, I sort of see this as not being necessarily stacked like one section we had before. In that Zverev section, I think is pretty stacked with both elite clay court players and also next level down, as I said. This one is a little hard to call as well, but that's because everyone's either out of. I mean, normally you'd be thinking, yeah, Rublev is there, but his form. Every time you think his form is getting patchy, it gets even patchier. But I am going to go for Rublev, Fergus, in this section. What about you?
I'm going to agree with you. I feel as though Shelton has got over the mental hump of playing on clay. Obviously saved those 3 match points in his first round match in Munich, and I thought he was going to go out. And I actually had typed in the group chat, John, how are you feeling about that prediction that Shelton's going to get more wins than losses on clay this year? I had that typed out in the group chat, and then he saved the 3 match points and I had to delete it. And I was like, and then he went on to be in the final, and I was like, well, okay, I can't ever type that in the group chat now. But yeah,
there are so many tweets as well. I'm sure that I've written 1 or 2 a day, not so relevant. It was more about how the first set was looking as though it was going with Sabalenka. But there's so many times I've been there ready to tweet like so-and-so gets it done in straight sets, never in doubt. And then 2 hours later, they've lost the match,
Yeah, I had actually that tweet written out about Nori Kachanov, but we don't talk about that. Yeah, I think Shelton has go over the mental hump of playing on clay, but I don't. If it was Rublev Shelton on a clay court, I think it's like 70% of the time I'm thinking Rublev comes through. It's going to be a tough one, but there is a small chance that Shelton goes out second round to Navoni. Like,
yeah,
I actually
sure.
think that is a very big possibility. Just with the movement that Navoni provides on court and the ability to return that big serve, just because he's just kind of everywhere on the court, isn't he? And, you know, I think off the baseline, on a clay court, Shelton isn't as prolific, can't use that forehand as much as he will on like a hard court. And it's kind of like, will he be able to hang in the rally as long as Navoni will probably want to make them? No. Navoni will probably want to be stretching these out as long as possible, and I just don't think that Shelton... Well, he might do, but if Navoni's on it and Shelton is a little bit off, starts missing the first serve, starts missing the forehand, and I mean, the backhand's already... we've said enough about the backhand for months now, so, you know, I feel as though if Shelton's not fully on it and he does have Navoni in round 2, it could get sticky. But I'm going to go Rublev.
Just doing my Shelton maths here. He lost once in Monte Carlo, and then he's won 4-1. So he's 4-2 at the moment for the clay court season, if I've got my maths right. Of course, if he loses here immediately, 4-3. If he loses immediately in Rome, 4-4, and then it'll all be down to the French Open. Because I'm just thinking about that win-loss scenario that I think I said. That obviously he's looking good right now. He's 4-2. But 2 early exits. In fact, if he goes out first round in the next 3 tournaments, then he still has a negative win-loss record. But yeah, he's got to win a couple more matches to get that safe. I think he'll do it one way or another, but I have got Rublev emerging here. So I'm going Rublev. I think Fergus, you're going Rublev too. Brenner, Carson, are you going Rublev as well?
I'm going Shelton.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
All right. And you,
Wow.
Brenner?
Yeah, I'm pulling a little bit of a Damien, but if Rublev does get through Monfils, then yeah, I like him to get to the quarterfinal.
Cool. Next section, Taylor Fritz is the highest ranked player here, but maybe others have slightly more pedigree on this surface, particularly in the form of Casper Ruud, who's I see seeded 14th. So his ranking must have taken a hit, I guess, after Monte Carlo final last year, Barcelona win last year, and then obviously not coming close to replicating that. But this is also his weakest clay court tournament amongst all of them. Rome, Rome semi-final, I remember it was where he got and lost to Rune, the only occasion he'd lost to Rune until they played each other in Barcelona this year. He's been in the French Open final twice, I think. Barcelona he's won, and Monte Carlo final as well. So yeah, this is and it makes sense that Madrid is his weakest clay court tournament in terms of his serve isn't that big, and so yeah, he's going to be more vulnerable to big servers, for example, at this altitude. His draw isn't too bad. He's definitely beating Safiullin if they end up playing each other, but it may well end up being Rinderknech, and I would expect him to merge the winner there. Korda will play China or Wong, and then could well be playing. We could be looking at a Korda Ruud third round, which I think will be really, really interesting. And then regarding a bit higher up, regarding this Fritz section, yeah, maybe Taylor emerges there. Cilic has got a wild card. We were talking about, of course, some of the wild cards earlier. Hurkacz is, yes, he'll benefit from the altitude, but him on clay, despite winning the Estoril title last year, and he's actually won a title, I think, on all 3 surfaces as a result of that Estoril one. But yeah, I guess maybe this is Sebi Korda's section. Maybe. What do you think, Fergus?
No, I'm gonna go Fritz, and I'm gonna go Fritz purely because I'm not sure about Ruud. I mean, this is Ruud's weakest clay tournament as it is, and then you take into account the form he's been in recently. I just don't trust him as much as I usually would on a clay surface. Korda, yes, I feel like it might be Korda versus Fritz in that round 4 match, and then I think if Fritz is fit enough, then Fritz comes through. Fritz has shown that he can be very good on a clay court. But yeah, Hurkacz, I think it'll be his first match since Indian Wells, if I'm first match since Indian Wells, I think, for Hurkacz.
Could be,
So
yeah. Yeah, he's been
yeah,
out for a while.
withdrew from Munich, didn't play in Monte Carlo, didn't play in Miami. So yeah, yeah, I think it's gonna be a Fritz quarter fourth round. I'm gonna go Fritz, but you know, we'll see. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Sinner comes through. I'm just kidding. That's a lie. That was a joke. It will be.
Yes. What are you thinking, Brenner?
I think this is it's almost not necessarily like a dream draw here for Rude, but you have to be like licking your chops a bit. You got Fritz and Hurkacz returning from injury, not necessarily like high pro S clay quarters by any means. And then you're getting Safalin or Rinderknech in your first matchup, which should be fairly casual. And yeah, the only one I'd be like worried about would be Korda, who actually put up a good fight versus Tsitsipas, but kind of was never close to winning, if that makes sense. I mean, he held his serve, the whole first set, but did face some break points there before he held to go to a tie break with Steph, but got bossed around kind of since that point. So I mean, yeah, I'm thinking it's Rude here.
I'm going to go with Sebi Korda. So we've got Rude, Korda. Fergus, who are you going for?
Fritz.
Fritz and Carson?
I'm going to take one of the two Americans. Fritz, if he's healthy, but I would not be surprised to see Sebi Korda come out of this. This is Rude's weakest of the big clay court tournaments. And yeah, if he gets past that, Hurkacz is coming back from injury. Fritz is coming back from injury. It could open up for him. Indeed.
All right. The Daniel Medvedev section, in terms of him, well, Daniel Medvedev and Holger Rune are the highest ranked seeds here in Rune with obviously 8 seed and Medvedev 9. Wow, this is pretty nice for Rune as well. I think Koboli and Marajan could be the trickiest match he comes up against. That'll be his first encounter, one of those two. That's tricky for a first round, if you like. Obviously, he's got a bye, so it's the second round officially. But for a first match, that's tricky. But then I guess if it's Nakashima or Offner, although there could be a qualifier in weight, and then Felix, Daniil, Jeddah. Yeah, it's a nice section for Rune. It could all be down to Marajan in particular. It could well be down to that particular match. And if he emerges the winner there, then he's looking good for a deep run. So I am going to go for Rune from this section. Fergus?
I'm going to go Rune as well. I don't think that there's really a big challenge here. Apart from his first round match, actually, as you said. I mean, Aliassime made the final last year with 27 retirements in his way. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I actually hadn't looked at Holger's draw when James said that Holger's going to take the title, but I think he'll probably fall at the quarterfinals. I mean, we saw Madrid's obviously very different to Roland Garros, but there was that monster 5-setter between Rune and Koboli in the French last year. That was very good, but yeah, if he gets past that, I think he's pretty safe into the quarterfinals for me.
Oh, Fernley won today in the qualifiers in Madrid.
He did.
Yeah.
Just having a quick look at some of the qualifying results. Fucsovic is out. Thiago Seyboth, I don't know what on earth is going on
crazy
at the moment. Yeah,
that's a ridiculous result.
Yeah, lost again. Botic winning. De Jong is out.
Yeah, Boyer's got some clay game to him.
There you go. So some interesting
Blanche
results coming in.
Lost the first set 6-1 to Majak.
Yeah, he got a terrible draw. Like that's
that is
the worst.
That's a dreadful draw. Yeah.
And I see Muller's in action. Wow, Muller was playing. Really? I knew he'd have to. Of course, yeah. My goodness me. So Muller's 24 hours later, he's on court again playing qualifiers. Crazy.
Love it.
But he did tell me yesterday. He said he felt fine. He didn't care. Yeah. But he was a bit in a hurry to get away from the press conference, I think, because he wanted to get on a plane. But yeah, fair enough. And he's up comfortably on Bassavado already. In fact, he's just 2 games away from victory. Yeah, that's a terrible draw for Darwin anyway. But yeah, Camille there in charge. Okay, friend of the show, Lloyd Harris, not anything but in charge in the early stages of his match with Hijikata. Okay, back to the draw. I'm going Holger. I think Fergus, you're going Holger. Brenner, Carson.
I think it's hard to not pick Holger Rune here. Like everyone else is struggling with something. I feel like if he can win his first match, I think he'll move on.
Yeah.
I like Holger as well. My sleeper here is Laszlo Jiri. I think he can get through Medi, and then FAA. We'll see his mental state, but Holger Rune.
Yeah, I did. I didn't think that he would necessarily be the person to emerge as the winner, but that was the name from that bunch that I can see on the screen right now. I mean, there could be Maishik falling in there, who's obviously looking good already in qualifiers. And there's all sorts of qualifiers that could really change our shape of our thing. I don't think necessarily there's anyone in qualifying that I expect to make, say, the quarterfinals. So it probably doesn't change my quarterfinal lineup much, but they certainly would change my perspective on quite a few draws. And if we get a really dangerous qualifier or two in that Zverev section, that would just really make that crazy. And if Maishik falls in there, for example, among others, or even Muller too. Anyway, okay, so that is the Rune section ticked off. Coming down to the Jack Draper section, the highest ranked seed. Is this where Jack Draper's clay court season takes off Fergus?
Yeah. Suits his game a lot better. I think with the serve and the forehand and just how consistent. I mean, realistically, I think that was the worst I've seen Jack play against Davidovich Fokina in a while. Nothing was working. Serve was like, he was really scrapping his game. Serve wasn't. He was not landing it. Forehand was missing by big margins. The only thing he could rely on was his backhand. And that somehow managed him to get to 3. I mean, I'm not actually sure how he managed to win that second set. It really wasn't a great quality. But, I'm hoping he's had a big reset. Obviously played a lot with, he's been seen with Sinner practicing. So, yeah, I think these conditions suit him, and I expect him to. Can you just go back to the draw quickly? Sorry, is it Paul in the other? Oh, Paul on the other side of the. Paul on the other side of the draw.
There's another name.
Yeah, Fonseca.
Fonseca.
Right. Realistically, I see a 4th round matchup of about 5 different opponents here, to be honest. I can actually only tell you the one person that it won't be, and that's Opelka. Any of the other 4
either. It won't be Leonard team.
As in on the other side. I expect Draper to scrape past Griekspoor. I also expect him to beat Berrettini. You can make all these sounds, but like you don't like Jack anyway, so you have a bias that's.
I'm not even going to get involved in
that. Here's my follow up to that, Fergus. I got you. I agree with the sounds being made because it's these are sketchy opportunities or sketchy matchups, but just like the forehand to backhand, lefty forehand to righty backhand situation is just going to be too much, I think, especially in these conditions. So. I'm with you there. I do think Draper comes through, and then I'm
4th round.
Fonseca fanatic for me. So
I don't know. It's actually picked names out of a hat for me for this 4th round. I mean, I don't think it'll be Kachanov. I don't think so. And I mean, Paul Fonseca for a 2nd round. I mean, that's what you like to see.
Yeah, that's fireworks.
You
don't really know how Tommy's.
And
really been.
I mean,
I think Fonseca wins that if it happens.
Yeah, I think Fonseca does win that too. But then, I think.
Shaq could lose 1st round. He could.
And that's the thing. I feel as though Fonseca's has this. It's like he hasn't. He's come through and he won the title in Buenos Aires. Yes, but. He hasn't had this huge moment yet like Mensik did in Miami. And Mensik had this huge moment where he really announced himself onto the scene, like 19 years of age, and he's won his first Masters, and he played unreal all week. Fonseca is yet to do that. Like, I feel like he won the title in Buenos Aires, but you look at the Buenos Aires entry list, and what?
Yeah,
Zverev?
those swings are a little. Yeah, and Zverev, obviously, we already spoke about his attitude there and stuff.
But,
yeah, that swing is exciting and dramatic, and crowds are there. But obviously, both Brazilian and Argentinian heavy in terms of the draws, and players are really, maybe going to the Middle East because they want to stay on the hard courts, and also Rotterdam and various others ahead of the Sunshine Double. So I know what you mean. I just think, Ferguson, and same for Carson and Brenner, I just think that this is, if you said to me that, you just mentioned Mensik winning in Miami, the first 1,000 that Fonseca ends up winning, it's a lottery. I know. I mean, he's going to win a 1,000, I think, at some point, sometime in the next probably couple of years, maybe a bit 2 or 3 years. But if I had to just sort of lean, if you just said to me which one could be the best suited to his game, clay, altitude. I like his serve. I think for a guy of his age, that it's already a very advanced situation. I think that Madrid is probably the 1,000 where I think he might end up at the end of his career having the best results. But that's not to say it's going to happen in the next few days or the next 10 days or so. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see who he comes up in the first round. But I think he beats Paul. I think he beats Opelka if that ends up happening. Of course, there could be another qualifying weight. Khachanov, that could be just the sort of opponent that could really frustrate the hell out of Zhao, as can happen. So yeah, it's often the case with Zhao, all or nothing in this draw. The interesting thing is this section is possibly the hardest to call, because although that Zverev section is stacked, it's got an elite top 2 or 3 player in the world who's also won this tournament before. We don't have that in this section. It's more a case of, Zhao's ceiling is possibly the highest amongst all these players on here, but he's also someone who could go out first round. The rest of them have, in the case of Berrettini, some pedigree at this tournament, and Khachanov having the experience, and Tommy Paul is arguably the best American on clay. But there's all sorts of sketchiness and coming back from injuries as well here. Griekspoor is in pretty good form. Wonder if he'll have any hangovers from that Munich loss he had to Zverev. But yeah, what do you think, Carson?
I think this is write a bunch of names down on a piece of paper, throw them into a hat, and pull a random one out, and that's who could come out of this. If I had to pick one player, probably I trust Tommy Paul more than anyone else to get to the quarterfinals and win 3 or 4 matches in a row. But Berrettini could do it, Draper could do it, Khachanov, Fonseca could do it, Lerner Tien is in here as well. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he got a couple of wins. I think I would lean Tommy Paul, but there's a lot of crazy things that could happen here.
Yeah. Okay, so you're going to go Paul for the section?
I will.
All right, interesting. Fergus for the section?
Draper.
Brenner?
Give me Fonseca, Draper. And I was thinking back to Indian Wells, was it?
Yeah.
They played,
Indian Wells, yeah, you demolished him.
But yeah, give me Draper.
All right. So we've got 2 Drapers, 1 Tommy Paul,
and you're going to go Fonseca.
Gonna go Matteo Berrettini.
Ooh.
All right.
Really?
Yeah. Listen, he's been in. He's had some decent results lately. The final here. Listen, I'm
just disappointed you didn't say Fonseca. I was expecting you to say.
I mean, he's there. He's in my mind. There's 3, 4, 5 players in my mind. Jack Draper's in my mind. Talon Griekspoor's in my mind. Khachanov is in my mind. Fonseca and Paul in my mind. I think there's 6 players I just mentioned, and that's before we see who the qualifiers are in this section. So, for me, the reason why I'm not going Draper is just I think it's a tough draw. I think.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Followed by Berrettini, followed by Khachanov, Fonseca, or Tommy Paul. It's tough, and there's so many 51-49s for me in there.
Yeah, no, and I agree, but I feel as though Draper's got that mental toughness now that he can
serve lefty as well should work well here.
Yeah, and I just feel like you look at his Indian Wells run, Fonseca first round. I mean that's probably as a first round non-seeded player, that's pretty much as tough as it gets.
Yeah,
Brooksby, Fritz, Shelton, Alcaraz, Runa. I mean,
that's Indian Wells. That's a different tournament.
I know, but you're saying 51-49 matches, and you're saying those are close matches, and Draper came through all of them. So
he did.
I feel as though, in my mind, I can back him.
They're not even 51-49. Some of those are 70-30 in their opponent's favor. I mean, Alcaraz is a
exactly
favorite.
But I'm just saying that I have the confidence is there now with Draper that he can get over the hump of it being tough match after tough match after tough match. That's what I'm saying.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next section, or we'll be here till midnight. France's Tiafoe, Humbert, Baez, and Djokovic. So the Novak Djokovic, of course, his first tournament in Madrid since 2022, I believe. So he's back. He's obviously practicing here with Andy Murray in the background. Let's have a quick look at the draw. For me, it's a pretty nice draw. Baez is probably the biggest opponent really in this section. Obviously, pre-qualifying results and placements. Baez in terms of reputation on this surface. Baez, though, he'll get a bit more on his serve. Maybe that'll help him, but not enough. I think Djokovic is probably emerging from this section. What do you think, Brenner?
I'm with you. I don't think there's a load of extreme talent here. We have some natural clay quarters. I'm thinking more of Darderi on the top half of the section, giving him a better chance to come out. And obviously we have our little Tiafoe Shelton debate. And I was honestly surprised in a good way by the Tiafoe clay game the last 2 weeks. Obviously it did not work out for him too well in Barcelona, where he dominated Munar, but just couldn't get it done. I think that there's an opportunity for him to go a little bit deeper. And, Alex Mueller coming on the scene this year and proving himself across surfaces. So that's been fun to watch. But, there's no one really threatening. Baez obviously is a tough test, but the altitude changes it a bit. So, yeah.
Carsten?
I don't think anyone's really going to push Novak here.
No.
Sebastian Baez is.
I doubt he might. That's a point. I'd be sleeping on it a bit, but go on there, Carson.
He might, but it would take a lot for the two of them to meet up.
True.
I think Baez is the one who I think is closest to Novak on clay, but I just trust Novak here a lot more than anyone else. Everyone else in this draw, if you told me that they lost their first match, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked by that.
True. Yeah. Bellucci, Jamor could go either way for sure. And the winner of that playing Baez, who knows? And Francis is always vulnerable, I think. And yeah, I'm with you. Humbert, he's not really great on this surface, but maybe in Madrid he might do better than anywhere else. But yeah, I'm going Novak in this section. I think I've got a Novak 2 and 3 from Brenner and from Carson as well. Are you a fourth Novak from this section, Fergus?
I am. You said, I remember you talking weeks ago before, when we were getting towards the backstage of Miami, you were saying that motivation is such a key thing for Djokovic, and if he has a run where it sort of not eases him in, but he gets those couple of early wins under his belt, and then things start to flow, and then all of a sudden he's in these quarterfinals, and then he sort of turns it on, and you have the real Novak play. And I feel as though this is that sort of draw. He can sort of ease himself in and then get to the round 4 quarterfinals, and then think, okay, now I'll really go for it. So yeah, I feel as though Djokovic kind of has this section in the bag.
Yeah, I'm going for Djokovic too. So that's 4 Djokovic's. I think that's one of the clearer sections for us to choose from. De Minaur and Musetti in this section, as is Jan-Lennard Struff. Struff, of course, former finalist here, and I think he might have made the fourth round of the quarters last year. I know he lost to Alcaraz again in a tight three-setter. Chapo, Nishikori. There's a few players here, by the way, that are signed up for Estoril, and I'm maybe quite keen for them to have an early exit. And one of them is Nishikori, another one is Fonseca. But that is a personal objective there. Okay, thoughts on this section, Brenna?
Yeah, we got a couple natural clay quarters. We got Tsitsipas. He had back spasms the other day, so hopefully nothing too serious and like quick recovery. Musetti, obviously a great run in Monte Carlo, despite losing a bunch of first sets, was able to piece it together. I don't know if the altitude helps him much, but you can't count him out. Chapo, still kind of question marks there, and De Minaur continuing to just show his, I guess, ability. Inferior opponents just struggle against him, and had so much success on the tour this year. So for me, it's kind of hard to rule him out on that little top section. And then there's another guy this is probably one of the better first round matchups is Echeverry Medjodovic. Medjodovic wowed me. I've been a big fan of him over the past year and a half. Hasn't had too much ATP Tour experience, but man, this guy's got game, effortless power, both wings, has a little bit of flair at the drop shot. He's got a big serve. This is perfect conditions for his game. Such a big hitter. So I think he can make some noise down in that section.
Maybe the Manchester United in this section, Ghosty, is Stefanos Tsitsipas, someone who's still living off former glories. So we've got Estoril and Manchester United ticked off. I'm going to go Tsitsipas in this section. It's a tricky one. Struff is a potential second round opponent for him. And then as you say, that bunch of three players, Echeverry, Medvedev, and Musetti. I think Musetti is the favorite amongst those three to be in that third round with Steph. But you could make a case for Echeverry and Medvedev being there. So it's a tough first match for Musetti, whichever way it turns out. But Musetti Tsitsipas third round. I mean, that feels like a sort of a quarterfinal or a semi-final to me from maybe 1 or 2 years ago. Just as they've kind of crossed over a little bit in terms of Musetti has been on the rise quite gradually, whilst Stefanos has been gradually slipping down. But I'm going to go Tsitsipas in this section. De Minaur is obviously, getting better and better and better. And just when you think he's peaked, he's got another peak to reach. I just think that and his clay game is getting better. I just think that maybe somewhere like Monte Carlo might be a bit better for Alex than Madrid. It was interesting to see Alex, for example, last year beat Nadal in Barcelona, but then not be able to beat him in Madrid, despite the fact that Nadal's weakest, without a shadow of a doubt, of all the clay court tournaments was always Madrid. But anyway, I'm going off a tangent somewhat. I'm going Tsitsipas in this section. Who are you going for, Carson?
There's a part of me that wants to pick De Minaur here, but I'm not sure that the conditions necessarily help him out the most here. I think I'll lean Musetti a little bit. He's been playing very well over the past few weeks, and with Tsitsipas, hopefully he's healthy and well, and that the back issue is not serious. But yeah, without knowing too much about how that's going to affect him, I'm not sure how comfortable I feel picking him.
Yeah, Gene says he's concerned about Tsitsipas' back injury, and maybe I should have taken that into more consideration. But anyway, go on, Fergus.
I'm going to go De Minaur.
Okay.
I think he's had such a good year on tour. And just performing in nearly every tournament he goes to. I think consistency is maybe his biggest weapon. Obviously, he's not known for his huge ground strokes. He's just known for how quickly he can get around the court. But I just think that he's been improving week on week. And, as you said, it seemed like every time it seems like he's got that level and he's sort of peaked at that level, and then he kicks into another gear and he's just even better. And I feel as though Demon probably comes through this. I don't think Musetti will replicate the trick of making it deep into a clay tournament like he did in Monte Carlo. I think it will probably be Steph versus De Minaur in round 4. And I think De Minaur comes through.
Okay. Did you make your call for this section, Brenna?
No, I didn't. I do think it's Demon up top, and the only way Demon gets through, I'm with you, John. If it's Steph, I like Steph to move past ADM, but because I kind of went off on a tangent anyway, I think Musetti's game is more equipped to the sea level type of clay. I'm going to go Hamad Midjotovic. Little breakout run here in Madrid.
That's good. I like it.
That's
And
what we
not
like
a
to
little
hear.
left field, but yeah, in terms of the serve and etc. Yeah, it makes sense. All right, let's keep up the pace. Let's get moving. Final section here. Carlos Alcaraz, the number 2 seed, and therefore the highest seeded and ranked person in this section. There is, of course, the asterisk of his health. There's been no news, which I'm thinking is good news. I would have thought a decisive no would have obviously been made today. I'm sure he'd have had a scan and everything looked at regarding the injury that he picked up, the abductor injury he picked up in Barcelona. So, yeah, no news is good news, I think, regarding Carlos. And once you start seeing him practice, we'll have even more confirmation of that. And it will be Friday or maybe even Saturday before he's in action. So that hopefully gives him enough time to recover. Lehetska, though, is an interesting name in this section. Hasn't Lehetska had a few injuries this year, or or is he just not playing that well? I just don't remember seeing his name deep in draws this year. Somebody
Lost to Musetti in Monte Carlo.
Okay.
After winning the first set 6-1, but everyone lost the first set 6-1 to everyone won the first set against Musetti 6-1, and then Musetti came back. Australian Open lost to Djokovic very convincingly.
Why was Lehetska's match against Darderi in Munich cancelled? Was that because of an injury?
Yeah, he was. No,
yes.
He was sick. He was sick.
Oh,
Yeah,
he was
he was
sick.
sick.
Okay.
Yeah. Lost to Norrie in Indian Wells in the second round.
Monfils, I think, first round or second round in second round, I think but he would have been his first match, I think, in
Yes,
in
I think
Miami.
Lehechka was him and Rublev that were the 2 seeds that lost first round of both Indian Wells and Miami.
Wow, so he's just losing early a lot, which is very, very unusual. So really his last really good run was probably Australia, where I think he made the 4th round before losing to Novak. Anyway, but he's, beat Rafa here last year, and I think he was doing very well until he got injured here last year, didn't he? Who was he playing? Was it Felix? Because everyone got injured against Felix. I'm going to guess it was
Felix.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Felix.
Yeah. Felix was almost like the Grim Reaper last year. You didn't want to be playing him, and your season might be over. But yes, anyway, if he was in better form, he'd be a real, potent opponent for Carlos. But Jarry as well is someone else who'd be a really potent opponent, but his form is nowhere to be seen. Grigor is slightly underwhelming at the moment. Maybe Mahatch as well. So it's not a bad section for Carlos. There are banana skins there, though, Carson.
There are plenty of opportunities for him to slip up if this gets dangerous at any point. I really like this draw for Carlos, though. I think he would play Zubirj in the second round. I think he can come through that, and then Lehechka, as we've mentioned, his form lately has been a little bit all over the place. And then you look at who could be in a 4th round. Dimitrov has struggled with some injuries. Mahatch hasn't had a ton of form. He's also had a couple of injuries earlier this year. Then Nico Jarry just hasn't done anything. I think this is a pretty wide open draw for Carlos to run through.
Yeah, highlighting there the fact that obviously that was at the beginning of the year, of course, but Lehetska did win Brisbane. Do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so, Lady Starlight, and fingers crossed we'll see you again sometime soon. Okay, I'm going not because I think that any particular reason, but yeah, just because there's not a huge amount of opponents, and if he is healthy, then I'm going to go Carlos. Fergus, Brenner, Carson, are we all going Carlos?
Yeah.
Carlos.
I am.
Okay, so that's Carlos emerging from this section. All right, let's try and make this quick. Who's winning the tournament? I'm going for. We've all laid out our players and our thoughts, so we don't need to go into too much detail. It's a really, 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 really tough section. But if he emerges from that section and gets to the quarters, Alexander Zverev. Fergus?
Yeah.
If he's fit enough and he stays fit, I'm going to go Alcaraz. I feel like he wants a little bit more than what he got in Barcelona. Obviously, be gutted after that Runa loss with the injury. Yeah, if he's fit enough, I think it's Alcaraz.
Yeah. All right, Brenner.
I'm with Fergus fitness wise, Alcaraz, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Runa in this final and do it again.
So an Alcaraz, are they on opposite sides of the draw? Are they? Yeah, Alcaraz and Runa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Alcaraz is a potential semi-finalist for Novak as well. So that could be also something to look forward to, especially if the fireworks can be anything like many of their previous clashes, but in particular that Madrid semi-final they had in 2022, I think was the last time we saw Novak there, was just off the scale level and possibly their second best match. Cincinnati probably does eclipse that. But yes. Okay. I've gone Zverev. Brenner and Carson have gone Alcaraz. Fergus, and we've got Aruna, by the way, don't forget, from James. And Fergus, you are going...
No, I said Alcaraz. It's Carson that hasn't said his.
Oh, Carson. Sorry, Carson.
Oh, good. Maybe a little bit boring, but I mean, same as Brenner and Fergus. I think if Alcaraz is healthy, he's going to win this tournament. I think he'll be motivated after not pulling out the victory in Barcelona. So,
cool. All right, that's it. Most people going to Alcaraz. I've gone Zverev, and James has gone for Runa. Still, lots to look forward to. Fingers crossed everyone can be healthy. Of course, as we said, question marks over the fitness of Alcaraz and Tsitsipas, among others. Any qualifying news to just give you before we bring this to a wrap? Darwin Blanche was a break-up, believe it or not, on Maishik in the second set, but he's not only lost that break, he's actually now down a break. So the pole is within touching distance of winning that match. Muller has indeed got the job done over Basavaredi 1-1. And Harris lost the first set to Hijikata. And talking of Harris, I should say specify Lloyd Harris has lost that first set. Billy Harris is down a break to Ethan Quinn. Quinn, of course, who played Alcaraz. And wasn't that first set pretty close with Alcaraz last week in Barcelona? Am I right?
Second set.
Second set. Okay, second set that was close.
Had a set point on serve.
Yeah, had a set point in the breaker.
Ooh, okay. Who is not motivated, Tony? Maybe it's someone in our audience after a 1 hour and 47 minute stream. I don't know, but that could be certainly pointed at many people on the tour as well. All right, listen, let's wrap this up. Thanks everyone for joining. Of course, that means everyone in the chat. If you are new to the channel, do hit subscribe. You've got about 60 seconds before this video comes to an end. And if you get that subscribe in right now, you'll see that ticker move over. But if you do it retrospectively, that's also just as good. And you'll get to feel good about that, I hope. But also hit the like button. And there's a notification bell. I think it means that you're more likely to get notification when we go live, because I think sometimes YouTube might skip you if you don't. But anyway, do give these guys a follow on social media. Let's see how quickly I can find that. I found hit the like button banner. I've also got one for Fergus here. There he is at Fergus_Gav. We've got Carson here as well on X as well at Carson Nix01 to replicate a world ranking that everyone obviously seeks. And why is Simon says tennis this far down? Don't know, but there he is. He's about where Tsitsipas is in the rankings in terms of my banners right now. But that is pure chance.
That's a pure insult. That's a pure insult.
All right, well, Madrid's knocking on the door.
Resting in Madrid. All right, so
exactly.
Brenner's gonna have a good time in Madrid sometime. Okay, cool. Anyway, that's that. I'm now gonna click out. If you all want to say a collective goodbye.
See ya.
Ciao.
All right. Now I have to find the button. Oh, there it is. Ciao.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.